So, I've been thinking lately about how we have a lot of words or concepts to describe things, and through their definitions, we can conceptually understand what they mean, and there's sort of like a sense of application of the concept to life, but I always feel there's a distance where it's labeling something that you'd have to think of stories or examples of to fully grasp the entire meaning of the concept. So, gratitude, for example, it's a concept that we all understand and talk about and use in a million different ways. But then when you think about gratitude, you need examples of being grateful, or the act of living the concept or living the word out. And being grateful to have a roof over your head, or being grateful to have really good friends or a job or whatever it may be. And until you have experience of living the concepts out, you don't really know the concept yet. So a big theme for me lately, in life in general, I think for all of us, has been this fact of you just don't know until you know something. And for me, a great example of that is experiencing compatibility with someone, romantically in this case, but at the end of the day, compatibility with anything. But in my experience, I just didn't know the degree of compatibility that exists and what it feels like to actually live out the concept of compatibility with a person until I was really compatible with somebody. And in experiencing that, it had me thinking and reflecting about so many things, like what about this is compatible, and why is this so compatible, and just being totally amazed that I now knew something that I couldn't have ever even imagined before. And moments like that I find very humbling, in the sense that when I find myself being caught up in like what's gonna happen, what's the future, and uncertainty and that sort of thing, or doubting myself in the decisions that I need to make or have made, and if it was the best way to do something. And I think back to these moments where I felt the exact same way about being with somebody romantically, like in a relationship. So it's like I would think, am I compatible? Like, I don't know if I'm compatible. Are we compatible? Like, who's compatible with me? What do I like? What do I don't like? And then just being compatible with somebody naturally, and it's a vibe. Like, the understanding of something turns from a concept into a vibe. And from this vibe, which I would describe as truth in the truest sense of the word, because I think truth can only, like, for something to be true, we sort of have to accept that we play a part in its creation and understanding and meaning and acknowledgement that it even exists as a truth. So what I mean by that is that there's an element of subjectivity to truth, whether people want to admit it or not. But yeah, and just the difference between not knowing something and having absolutely no real relationship to it other than imagining potentially being fully certain and to understand something, versus actually becoming certain in something. I guess for me is a very practical way of saying how I'm able to have a sense of faith in humanity and myself and life in general. Just that in these moments where there was so much suffering and doubt and confusion and whatever, and then to have these moments of clarity that don't even feel like they are yours. They just feel like you experience this thing that's bigger than yourself, but also recognizing your part in it, where it's like, I had to become the person I was to enter into a situation where I could even have the opportunity to experience being compatible with somebody. If I hadn't put in the effort, or whatever you want to call it, use my attention in a certain way to develop and grow into a person, that potential situation for experiencing compatibility might not have ever happened. So, you're playing a part in this, and in these moments of clarity where you get to learn something from being taught through experience and self-awareness, I guess. So in these types of moments where you experience, or where I've experienced, this undeniable difference, love that term, undeniable difference, because I certainly don't want to be asking anybody, nor myself, nor think that that's all there is to develop a belief or a sense of faith in anything where it doesn't come with undeniable differences, and in the difference, the undeniability of said difference, do I have a tangible thing to place my faith into. So again, undeniable differences have an element of experience within them, and yet feels like it's a part of something bigger than yourself, which I think is, again, undeniable when we look at the nature of our reality, which is that I am drawn to even make this video, and if you are watching this video, there's an element of self-recognition that we're experiencing, which is that we are communicating and relating, and I sense myself in you, or I wouldn't be expressing or making anything, thinking that anything beyond myself is going to be able to interpret or understand this. So, and if you're seeking this sort of thing, or you know me, well, I think that we're all having that experience. So that is sort of the tangible element of this sense of there being something bigger than ourselves, or bigger than the self. And these undeniable differences that I'm talking about in the example of compatibility, where until I was compatible with somebody, I just lived in uncertainty and looking for certainty. I was looking to be able to know what is compatible and what is not compatible. And that way of approaching life and understanding life and making decisions for me felt like an enormous pressure and weight on my shoulders, to have to know things for certain that I felt that I would be guessing. It's like, I don't know what compatibility means absolutely, or I wouldn't be doubting it, or I wouldn't be questioning it in the same way that I knew I felt about it, if that makes sense. Like, of course we question things all the time and we reflect, but these moments of undeniable difference, where you go from understanding something one way to understanding it differently, and it just is different. In moments like that, there is a certainty that emerges, because the difference is the certainty. It's like it's undeniable that there is a difference, in the way that you're experiencing whatever you're paying attention to in that given moment. So this is another great example of the power of undeniable differences for me, and I think for most people, is with weight loss or fitness, where it was in the undeniable differences that I found evidence to support that my effort was taking me in the direction that I hoped it was, where I was becoming stronger and more fit. And it didn't matter if I had a goal or if I had it all planned out and I had it myself on a schedule. And what mattered were the moments that were undeniable differences, where when I would try my clothes on, I liked the way that they looked. And it was just every day I would put on these clothes that used to be uncomfortable in my body, and now they just feel different. Or, if you can lift heavier weights, like I could never do push-ups, and thanks to my partner, I am doing chest workouts. It's like up until the moment of doing the push-up, nothing had me able to put my faith in the fact that I would be able to eventually do a push-up. And then I did the push-up, and I went from never being able to do a push-up to being a person who can do a push-up. So again, up until these moments of difference, we just don't know about something exactly as it really is until we know. And that's a hard thing to have to live with, that you only ever understand something to the best of your ability until you can ever be sure about it. And of course, in my own head, and probably yours, we're thinking, yeah, but can you really be certain about anything? And that's what I'm talking about, is that you can, if you experience an undeniable difference, where you don't have to convince yourself of anything, you don't have to do anything, because the difference just happens to you. It's like a temperature difference. There's just a sense of difference. And I think we all have this sense, because we exist in the world, and we have preferences and experiences, and we just notice difference. Anyway, so again, realizing this, that in this compatibility moment, or another great example is thinking, I don't like any alcohol, but I always thought I wouldn't like a mojito, and I lived my life being like, no, I don't want that, I hate the taste of alcohol, I'm gonna taste it. And then trying a mojito and thinking it was delicious, and it just blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe here I am holding this really sharp, firm, absolutely certain opinion about a preference that I have about mojitos that isn't even true. And it's like, I don't know when I picked it up, where that opinion turned into an opinion that I have to hold. But in that moment, I call them mojito moments now, where if I think I know something for certain, I'm like, wait a minute, there's so few particular things that I know for absolute certainty. The things that I know for absolute certainty are much more general, and sort of just generalized topics, like that I love people and I believe in people, and everybody's just a person at the end of the day, and objectivity is as humanly objective as possible, and I work from that framework. Everything comes out of that framework for me, where it's like, if we're going to develop a sense of faith, it's got to come through developing a sense of faith in the self and ourselves, and doing it together, and not making it into anything that it doesn't need to be. It's just a sense of faith and meaning and friendship and having that reflected back to you in another person, and the feeling of actually trusting people. There's another undeniable experience that I got to have, was the difference between never having trusted anybody and then being able to trust somebody. And it's just an undeniable difference. And then in reflecting upon these differences, I'm like, how can I express these things that I'm experiencing that other people are also looking to experience, and that I'm hearing in all of these conversations about life that people are having across the world and trying to figure out how to believe in anything. And here I am having these seemingly meaningless experiences relative to, like, a mojito is just a mojito. It's almost like a prop for the lesson that I learned in that moment. Or a relationship is a prop, or anything is a prop. Anything that you develop a relationship to and come to understand something about the nature of reality is a prop at the end of the day. But through having these experiences, my life is changing. Like, not recognizing the reality of my relationship to what a mojito is, and then experiencing the difference from Stephanie up until like that moment of her life to the moment of trying a mojito and liking it, and having that sense of like humbleness just wash over me felt shocking at first, to be like, wow, do I even really know myself? What else do I think I know that I don't actually know? Or what do I think I know that needs to be expressed or said or labeled in a very specific way, that at the end of the day, I'm really just trying to articulate and communicate or understand something deeper than that at a human level. But I think that I need all these words and everything to properly respect the belief that I so strongly hold. And even if those words aren't relating to people in the way that I would hope they are, it's like I gotta use those words because I don't like mojitos, and it's like I don't like mojitos and I gotta use these words until I use different words, or until I have a mojito, and then suddenly everything I thought up until that moment is like part of a new understanding. So again, these are the moments in my life that I really feel like I learned something and I know something, and it makes it just a little bit easier to stay alive. And it's like nobody can really have these moments for you. Nobody can give you these moments, because these moments are created out of a way of developing a sense of yourself, so that you exist with yourself and you have this relationship to yourself where you can perceive difference, basically, and in the difference you can actually participate in your own learning and growth, I guess. And then to me, that's how I live in the present. I used to think living in the present was like this thing I wasn't certain about. Am I in the present? Am I dissociated? Am I in the future? Am I in the past? It's like, what even is the present? Is time even real? And now, how I feel like living in the present is being able to recognize my preferences, recognize how I'm understanding things, and being able to adapt and be free enough, I guess, in my self and the way that I think and my feelings, that I can constantly be letting go of things that are really just props. The words that I'm using to communicate to people are just props, or the goals and the ideas I have about like how I'm supposed to look to be satisfied with myself are props. Those are just props. And as I experience things, I realize that, it's actually the small differences in the way that my clothes feel in my body. They're so small, the differences, but that's where everything is. It's in those very tiny little differences that I'm able to get a broader understanding and get some objectivity over what's happening, and actually be able to, extract the value out of the life that I'm living and the things that I'm doing and the things that I care about and what I'm choosing to pay attention to. And not only extracting the value out of it, but also becoming more of an active participant in it with my own freedom to try different things out or create different ways of doing things, and just be able to learn and hear the right question and ask the right question. And because I really value sharing what I learn and what I know, also being able to craft a thoughtful answer that is actually in response to the question that people are really asking, that we're collectively asking, and not getting sucked up into the frills of the whole thing and the box that it's being presented in, or the words that it's being presented in, or the perception that people have of whatever they're doing. I don't need to get caught up in that stuff. Anyway, so, in this sense of not getting caught up in these things, what I mean is not getting caught up in the props. So I respect that people are using props to be able to communicate with me when we use specific words that suggest a specific specialization of a way that we are understanding patterns in society or the nature of reality, whether it be political terms, sociological or philosophical or theological, or simply emotive. Like, these are just descriptors, or even science, the way that we interpret things and gather data and then produce reputable sources of ways of doing things that are backed up with empirical evidence and experience. And simply not getting caught up in that, in the sense that I respect all of this effort. I would not be alive. I would have no reason to be here if I couldn't connect to and appreciate the effort of other people, those who have come before me, those who are here with me now, and those who have yet to arrive. I feel so moved by the effort of people to understand the nature of reality, and to not only try to understand what's going on, but to think about each other and to do it for more than just the self. But yeah, so not getting caught up in the props, just respecting that people are using the props and not dismissing the props that they've chosen to use to express something that really does mean something to them. And at the end of the day, because humanly objective as possible, to some degree, I care about it too, because we are alike and we have some fundamental things that we share in common that are gonna produce some sort of connected, relatable experience that would be optimal for the both of us. Yeah, so not getting caught up in that and just being able to focus on what really matters to me and the things that I am really certain about, and that I know other people can be really certain about, and are really just asking through their props for certainty, to know that you believe what they believe, to know that we can move in a specific direction, that all of this effort and theatrics and ways of communicating are not for nothing, and that your efforts are not in vain, and all of these props you've come to utilize and understand, and the preferences you hold, and the justifications and the reasoning and the systems of value that you have used or whatever to understand it. Not getting caught up in that, and being able to perceive these undeniable differences, and remembering the necessity of the humbleness that I felt in that moment of existing one way and knowing reality one way, and then coming to realize that, wow, reality is actually very different, and freeing myself from expectation, number one, where, if I feel like I'm doubting something, it's like, all right, well, this is just one of these areas of life where I'm here to learn something. I don't know the answers yet, so it's not about proving anything to myself or other people. I'm not an expert yet. I'm not a teacher. I don't have access to that experiential quality that's intrinsic to real truth. I just have conceptual truth, and that can only take me so far when it comes to actually living out the reality of my full experience, which is not just mental. Lost my train of thought, which happens all the time. Not getting caught up in it. Okay, so by not getting caught up in the theatrics or the props or things that we think we know, but that sort of raise the sensation in us that we might have to defend or prove something about it. Because the way that I believe in the things that I believe is certain, allow me this adaptability and flexibility to meet my environment where it is. So, believing in things as humanly objective as possible, and believing in human potential as my core beliefs of certainty, those are things that that sort of give me a language to communicate with people, where I don't end up having to prove anything to people because they're part of my belief. And the way that they are being and acting is already confirming my belief, and it just restores my sense of faith. It's like they don't really even have to agree with me, because it wouldn't make sense for them to, because they're using different props and they're having different experiences that I haven't had. But what's important for me is that because I want to be able to share the experience that I'm having with other people, where I feel optimistic about people and I have a sense of faith in us, and I do believe that, we can reduce unnecessary suffering and be friends with each other and actually effectuate the world in not a naive way, just in a way that at the end of the day is quite simple, but is predicated on an immense amount of suffering and complexity to be able to even appreciate the simplicity of what my beliefs are, if that makes sense. So by being able to appreciate and integrate and actually start participating in these moments where I might get to have an undeniable difference happen, this is where the point of this whole video comes in, which is the idea of integrity and having integrity. That is something that has prevented me from expressing myself and believing in myself and feeling like I have any type of authority to even make any type of claim or about anything without having to justify it and prove it with other people's ideas, because I didn't know how to share or articulate or even relate to my own beliefs myself, because I felt like the way I was behaving was out of alignment with what I'm feeling or believing on the inside, if that makes sense. So, the idea of integrity for me is that you understand your preferences, and when you're confronted with a situation, you wouldn't have a mismatch where you're like, no, I don't like that. When in reality, in a different time, space, moment, which is the future, you do, in fact, like mojitos. So it's sort of the present is the only moment that exists. So it's becoming your real self in the moment. And that to me is what having integrity is about. So it's hard to know if you have integrity if you don't really have that relationship with yourself that I mentioned earlier, where you can, reflect with yourself and be like, do I actually need this specific word or this specific prop or this specific preference or this specific goal or way of gauging value of something and knowing if I'm moving in the right direction? Or is this just the best that I can come up with what I know so far? And perhaps because it feels not easy and confusing, and then I have to sort of constantly be reminding myself of its value, because the value just isn't intrinsically obvious to me, and I'm sort of having to just hope that it will become obvious and become certain and I can move on to thinking about other things. In those moments, are you able to recognize the value of of the fragility of what you believe to be certain, and that it might change. And that is overwhelming for people. We like certainty. You know, I love certainty. I love being certain about things, and I love to understand things thoroughly, and then be able to, like, that things become almost procedural, and then I can move on to cooler ideas and think about more things and bring myself closer to, like, more wisdom or whatever. But to be able to recognize that our certainty is very fragile, and in recognizing the fragility of that through being humble, which is that we don't know everything, or we don't know till we know, and that we are taking responsibility for that subjective aspect of the nature of truth and reality. Because when you're able to do that, you allow yourself to exist with integrity, which is that up until this moment, and in this moment, I don't know if we know what we think we know, you know, or I don't know if we know how to, like, say what we're really trying to say with different words. I think we might just only be able to understand something a certain way, or we only understand ourselves a certain way, and there might be a better way, because this seems quite difficult. It doesn't seem to really be helping us relate to another person, or become more certain about something, or lose more weight, or develop any type of skill, like study habits. You might think you have to study 5 hours every night, and turns out actually you study better 1 hour in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, and only 20 minutes at night. And it's like, in being able to recognize those things, you open up the possibility to have a relationship with yourself where you begin to understand having integrity. You develop a certainty in knowing that you are living with yourself in harmony and authenticity, and you have integrity. And when you have integrity, when you can be certain about your own integrity by just recognizing what you may or may not know, the feeling of that, the feeling of having integrity is incredible. It's like literally the feeling of faith, of inner peace, of confidence, of safety, of security, of satisfaction. It's so many things, because you're just fully present in the moment and in your own decision making. So it's like every moment that, like, there's chaos coming at you in the environment ain't ever gonna be certain. To be able to be certain by having integrity and just recognizing what do I know and what I don't know. And when those things become, like, not you anymore, you experience life completely differently. People are different because you're different. Everything is different because you're different. There's an undeniable difference. And it anchors you in reality, and it anchors you in your real life, because you're the center of this idea of integrity. And from being this center, like, so yeah, the point of what I'm talking about and why I think there's value to this, and it's even worth jumbling up and trying to share through a YouTube video, is just simply because of how molecular and free and accessible the ways that I was able to come to this relationship with myself and have integrity and be able to, like, actually share my ideas without worrying that I'm going to be judged, or worrying that I'm secretly trying to make these so that, like, people think I'm cool, or people think I'm smart, or whatever insecurity and doubt I'm having about myself and my ideas and my props. The way that I was able to, like, get to this point and be relaxed and just live and, like, believe in people and like, you know, be myself and enjoy it, and like myself is through these molecular moments of difference, and in just recognizing these molecular moments of difference. And then not only being able to recognize them, but beginning to start to look forward to recognizing them, just because of the immense amount of positive impact that it has on my life and my desire to stay alive. And also the impact that it has on simply being able to share that with people. Perhaps it's the energy of the way that you're able to express something now, where you are an expert when you develop a sense of certainty about something, because you're able to infinitely relate it in a million different ways to people. It's like a little token of creativity that you now have, where you don't have to worry about justifying anything. You can just think about it and know it, and it's like knowing how to draw. It's like just knowing how to have integrity, just knowing what compatibility is, just knowing these things about the nature of your reality. And if it's the nature of your reality, to some degree, it's the nature of all of our reality, and the collective reality, and the collective human experience, and feeling inspired to actually get to share it with people now. You know, it's like you don't have to worry about trying to connect with people by thinking of things to share with people. It's like you just get things to share with people, and it has value because you lived it, and because your story is attached to it, and the wisdom of the knowledge of pre-understanding something to after understanding something, which is humility. And through humility, your words are predicated in a sense of integrity. And when people have a sense of integrity, we can respect them and we can trust them. And how do I know that this is the case? Because that's the relationship that I am having with myself, and that's why I think there's value to whatever topic of video this is right now, because I'm having this conversation with many different people, and I've been having this conversation with myself my entire life, and I can tell that I respect myself more, and I am no longer worrying about being a hypocrite, and just having a sense of integrity and a sense of peace, and getting to friggin' trust myself with this burden of decision making that is part of the way that our reality is, where every moment we've got to make another decision, and we've got to decide how we feel about something. We got to decide all these things, and then we got to hear other people's decisions, and then make decisions on decisions on decisions, and it's a lot. It's a lot, and I tell ya, a lot of it becomes one-dimensional and less interesting in a good way when you have a sense of integrity. You can just perceive things as they are revealed to you, or as they're brought into your field of attention, when you have integrity. You know, it's like a good example of this is when I'm watching media, like the show Kim's Convenience, or a lot of the new stuff that's coming out. I will watch these things where people are negative towards each other, and the whole show is just people having dysfunctional relationships with each other. I'm losing my voice. and never coming or growing as people. Every episode, they're the same type of character, they have the same type of problems, and they're very mean to each other and hurt each other. Now, I can watch that, and I gotta go get a sip of water first. Okay, so I can watch that and, watch it and try to, understand it and find value in it, but if I am coming at it from a place of integrity, I just don't want to watch it, because it's dehumanizing, and there's nothing about it. It's it's like The Office, and who was it, like David Foster Wallace, talking about this like meta irony that we have in our creative expression, especially nowadays. Like, I mean, it just becomes more meta and meta and meta as we abstract through technology and the mediums of communication that we have. But like this meta irony of real human things. So like you take these human things like the family unit or anything, business, whatever subject is happening in the shows, sexuality and sex and romance, and we just do this like weird meta abstraction where it's like everybody can only be the negative versions of themselves, perhaps because it's a projection of culture and the writers and the way that we understand human nature or something, that's the most relatable angle to take. And if I have integrity in those moments, I don't think that that's very good for people to watch. I think that it's hard enough to exist in this world, and when we watch shows like this where there's no growth and the people are just very negative to each other and it's the same thing every single time, it's like that's not reflective of reality. That's reflective of like maladaptive coping strategies where we hope to not have to live like that. And there's just no growth in these things. So when I used to be able, I used to just consume whatever people were watching and think to myself like, okay, well, if people are watching this, like I want to figure out why and I want to pull the value from it. But through understanding myself and having a sense of integrity, all of this is happening in this bubble of like what I actually value, which is fostering human potential and reducing unnecessary suffering. So it's like, I don't want to watch those shows because they don't foster a sense of connection to what I value. I don't want to watch people suffering, I don't want to watch people behaving in ways that are extremely violent, and there's just, the end of whatever media I'm consuming never has like any value to the way that people really want to be. So for example, it's like Top Gun, like that's an easy one where it's just like, or actually that's not a good example because it's a fun movie to watch with the planes and stuff, but like anything where there's like a hero who has this shitty personality and all the characters are shitty, and then it's like they just move through this story and then maybe they might even be a little bit of a good character, and they resolve whatever molecular experience they're having, but then they just remain in the broken system. The system is never addressed and the system is never changed. I think it was Adorno or someone who talks about that, like in a philosophy or a social works of some sort. But it's basically just that the system is never disrupted, and if the system is disrupted, the system will always absorb deviations, and the system will continue as normal, and these problems just perpetuate themselves. So when I'm watching that, it's like, okay, but what's the solution? And it's like it just is too much negativity on repeat or something, if that makes sense. So I found that the more I'm focused on like developing a sense of integrity with myself, with that relationship I was talking about, I'm watching less and less of these things because it's only me who's making these decisions. I'm not adding in like, yeah, but like other people watching them, it's good for you to know what's going on, It's like, no, if it's not obvious and I have to like make this thing work for me, it's like, then it should just reveal itself to me and then I'll watch it, but it's like, I don't want to have to turn things into something so that I can maintain a sense of integrity. It's like either there's some intrinsic value in it or there's not. And yeah, so basically in these molecular moments of difference where you can just present yourself with a choice, do I want to have an orange or an apple? And it's like, if you are like, I really want an orange, eat the orange, don't spiral and be like, yeah, but if I really want the apple, or eat the orange and then try the apple and think about it with yourself, you know, and be like, okay, I chose the apple right away, and then I had doubts and I really wanted to eat, or the orange I chose right away, and now I'm thinking I might want the apple, and then let yourself taste both and then gain more information about your preference and how you make the decision. And it seems so silly, but it's a pattern of behavior and ritual that you can use on larger scale things. So when it comes to like looking at these social issues or politics and economics, you know, and philosophy and spirituality and whatever else huge topics we have, well, from the ground up, by the time you get to these things, it's like you know why you're there, you know what you believe, and you know what's underlying all of these things. You know, it's basically you have integrity with your own sense of humanity, and then you can understand these things through that lens, I guess. Something like that. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about.